the elderly neighbor couldn't sleep in the middle of the night. He went door to door knocking on other people's homes. This behavior angered the surrounding residents. They immediately pushed the elderly man downstairs. However, his actions weren't meant to disturb anyone, but to save everyone's life. It turns out, his son is a firefighter at the fire station and had just received an emergency call saying there was thick smoke coming from below the building. If people didn't evacuate in time, the fire could spread to the upper floors within half an hour. So he quickly told his father to notify the neighbors to evacuate while there was still time. But his son never expected that his request would become a death sentence for his father. After hanging up the phone, the elderly man, disregarding his mobility issues, rushed to knock on the neighbors' doors. He knocked for a long time, but only a female broadcaster answered the door. The elderly man urgently told her there was a fire and asked her to evacuate quickly, but the broadcaster looked around and saw no signs of a fire. She thought the elderly man must be confused, so she prepared to walk away. In a panic, the elderly man grabbed her arm. This led to a misunderstanding. The girl thought the elderly man was harassing her and slapped him across the face, calling him disrespectful. The loud slap immediately caught the attention of the neighbors. The elderly man quickly told everyone there was a fire downstairs and urged them to evacuate before it was too late, but the neighbors didn't believe him at all. At that moment, the construction team leader confidently said that if anything happened to the building, he would be the first to know. He claimed the elderly man's story about a fire was complete nonsense. Seeing that the construction team leader said this, the neighbors didn't bother to listen to the elderly man and went back to their own homes. But they didn't know that the fire downstairs was already spreading. Just as the elderly man decided to escape alone, he suddenly remembered that he couldn't let his son down. So he picked up a fire extinguisher and smashed a neighbor's door. The noise completely angered the neighbors. A wealthy second generation even pushed the elderly man in a wheelchair and threw him downstairs. The neighbors mocked the elderly man's pitiful state and demanded the property management take him away. The wealthy second generation immediately called the property manager, not realizing the thick smoke downstairs. The property manager rushed downstairs to ask what had happened. The wealthy second generation started talking about the elderly man spreading rumors about a fire, saying the elderly man had broken their door. The property manager pretended to be kind, telling everyone that neighbors shouldn't make things awkward. Then he hurried downstairs to help the elderly man. Just as he was about to reach the bottom, the property manager's phone rang. It was the elderly man's son calling, telling him the fire was real and that everyone would be in danger within 20 minutes if they didn't evacuate. But at that moment, while explaining, the elderly man's son got into a car accident. He couldn't explain the situation in detail and quickly got out of the car. On the other side, the neighbors heard no sound from the phone and thought the elderly man was staging a play. They believed he was trying to create a fake fire to steal their belongings. Hearing this explanation, they were even more convinced that the elderly man had an ulterior motive. Little did they know, the fire had already spread uncontrollably, and they would no longer be able to escape.